Recording in progress. Good morning, everyone. We're just waiting for people to join, so we'll take a couple of seconds. Right, I think we're ready to crack on now. So what I would like to say this morning is good morning to everyone. You're all very welcome to our chamber event this morning. On behalf of the Londonderry Chamber, I am delighted to introduce Kieran Kennedy. Kieran has over 40 years experience in the textile manufacturing and social enterprises sectors in key positions, most notably as Managing Director of O'Neill's Irish International Sports Company Limited and Chairman of 21 Training. Kieran was named in the Queen's Birthday Honours list in June 2021 for services to the economy during the pandemic. He actually identified a need and pivoted the business to manufacture scrubs to support the health trusts in Northern Ireland. He joined the board of Invest NI in March 2020 and was appointed by DTI to the Manufacturing Trade Advisory Group in August of the same year. In 2019, he was awarded the prestigious Global Ireland Award for Services to Irish Enterprise by the Irish Consulate General in Boston, USA. I have to say he's been a good friend and advocate to the Northwest. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to hand you over to our MC, journalist Jeananne Craig. Jeananne is a Derry-based journalist and copywriter. She returned to her hometown in 2018 after stints covering breaking news, politics, entertainment in places like London, Dublin, and Manchester for Press Association, Guardian, Sunday Times, and Irish Times. So I have to say we're in great company this morning, and Jeananne, I'll hand it over to you.
Thank you, Dawn, and good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us. The study deal is coming and innovation is at the very heart of it. Today's event is a chance to showcase the brilliant innovation that's happening here in the Northwest. So who better to talk about the topic and hopefully pass on some advice about building a culture of innovation in our own businesses than Kieran Kennedy. Now, after our chat, we're hoping to have some time for audience questions, and we'll also hear from our study deal partners. Kieran, you're very welcome. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Jeananne. I'm delighted to be here.
Thank you. Take us back, Kieran, if you would, to that afternoon in March 2020 when the world began to go into lockdown. You had to send all your staff home. How did you manage to embrace innovation, Kieran, in the face of COVID-19?
Well, do you hear an echo?
Yes, but echoey there, Kieran.
Right, can I just change this one? Sorry.
Yeah.
You change the, it's coming through.
The joys of Zoom.
No, I just need to change the sound settings here. Is that okay, right?
That sounds a bit better now, Kieran. Great.
Well, suppose, you know, it was a dark day for O'Neill's. We were just faced with, you know, lockdown. It was around about the 18th of March, and it was just surreal, really, to have to tell the 750 staff that we were closing the factory. And at that particular time, there was no mention of furlough or anything like that. It was just closing the factory and no one knew where it was going. But people often say to me, how did you feel? I mean, I didn't really feel that bad. I just had to sit and think about it. So the factory closed that afternoon and I just stayed on in my office. And my office is on the main road. And there's a, you know, you can see in through the doors, window. And people were ringing up and saying, is Kieran okay? He's sitting on there on his own. But I was just sitting thinking about, well, you know, we have a problem here and we need to get a solution. And I was aware that, obviously, you know, for the pandemic, that the hospitals were short of scrubs. And the scrubs are manufactured traditionally out of a very harsh polycotton material. But I knew that, you know, the materials that we had would be ideal for making scrubs. So I made a few phone calls, a few contacts. I was speaking to Geraldine Mackay, the Acute Services Director in Altnagelvin, and also to Dr. Nicola Duffy, and they said there was a huge need for scrubs. So I went to Derry that night and met with Geraldine Mackay, and she gave me a sample. And the meeting didn't start that well because she was I seen her standing with this parcel in her hand, and I walked over, and she says, "How you doing, Kieran?" I says, "I'm doing grand. How you am?" And she said, do you not know me?" And I says, I was trying to be nice one. "Well, the face rings a bell, like, but she says, "Well, I'll tell you something. You and your twin brother Brendan used to go from Sion Mills to the Christian Brothers in Omagh on the bus every morning, and I used to join the bus at Newton Stewart, and you two boys used to pull my hair." So that was the start of a wonderful relationship. So look, I took the garment home, met the factory manager in the car park. She looked at the sample. We brought a couple of girls in on the Saturday morning. We made the sample. By Saturday afternoon, we had the sample passed and approved. And Monday morning, I phoned our dye house in Dublin, and they started to dye the fabric, which we already had in stock. Because we knew that there was issues in China, and that's where we were buying our yarn from. So we bought yarn ahead. And the reason why we were able to do that, because we had the materials, where not all our companies didn't have materials. There was a huge blockage of materials, but we kind of bought our yarn ahead so we could knit the material. And we just started manufacturing the scrubs I had all the guys back in the factory on the Wednesday morning. So I had a plan. I suppose, again, for me, innovation is looking at a problem and coming up with a solution. And there's always a solution to any problem. It doesn't matter what it is. So, that's the way I would look at it. And throughout my career, that's what I did. Looked at problems, looked at issues, and try and come up with a solution that would make it easier for, us to manufacture products and more or less to release good people who are spending time doing monotonous chores or whatever, and to try and, mechanize that or digitalize that so that we could, release them to do more important things to grow the business.
And no, it's an incredible achievement in the face of that stress to, in the space of a week, completely turn around your business and your output, Kieran. And 42 years at O'Neill's, it's an incredible achievement as well. And you started there when you were 16. Now, you've told me in your own words that you were the biggest messer in the factory when you started and you moved on to managing director. So can you tell us about your own innovation journey since then, and maybe what you've learned along the way that you could pass on to other businesses watching today about creating that culture of innovation?
Yeah. So I left the Christian Brothers just before I was to do the O-levels. I fell out with one of the brothers, and I said, "I'm not going back." So my father said, "You're not going to sit about here in the dole." So when I got this job at O'Neill's as stock control clerk, there's only 30 people in the factory whenever I started. And, they were arranged from young, mainly women from all ages. I was just thinking about this morning, like some of the women that worked in the factory with me when I started would have been working in the factories, the shirt factories in Derry in the 1940s. So they had the skills and they were there, but, we always had good crack. And whenever the boss would have left the factory, it was just down tools. We just had a bit of crack and a bit of carry on, whatever. But I stayed there for 9 years, and then I was supposed to go to Australia, and me and my wife got married, and we're going to Australia. And, then the manager then was removed or whatever. And the Paul O'Neill, whose father founded the company in 1918, said, "Who's going to take over?" And said, "There's only one man, Kieran Kennedy, but he's going to Australia." So he invited myself and my wife, Linda, then down to Dublin and interviewed both of us to make sure that she would support me. And I had to just go back. We had a party and everything for me for leaving. I got a watch and all, and we had a big party. And then 2 weeks later, I went back, and I was the boss. So it was a big turnaround. It was a bit like poacher turned gamekeeper, but no, I got on well with all the staff, and they worked well with me. So. No, the first I just looked at things, things hadn't moved on in the 9 years that I was there. I mean, there still was 30 staff there, still doing it the same way. A lot of stuff done by hand. And the first thing I did was, I made a promise, first of all. And, the promise was I would never, refuse an order, because I would have seen that happening, because the company wasn't growing, because, the previous management were refusing orders with no space and making excuses. And I never let a customer down. So within a week, I had started a small unit. We did have no space, all right. And I had 2 girls making sweatshirts for Air Renta, who were selling them down at the airport down in near Limerick there, in Shannon. And they were going to the airports in Moscow and stuff. So I had 2 girls. I ended up then with about 20 girls sewing up there, kept expanding. And within a year, we moved from a 7,000 square foot to 16,000 foot IDB advanced factory in Strabane. And a lot of the things, I would have went out and I would encourage all my staff to go out and see how other people are doing things. You sit in Strabane, you'll never know, how things are done. So there was a show in Manchester at that time called the Bobbin Show, and it was all to do with, the manufacturing, the sewing industry. And I bought a computer. We didn't have a computer in the factory at that time. I mean, we didn't even have a fax machine. We had a telex machine in them days. And, so we bought this computer with a software to do the lay planning. So it was a matter of trying to join all the patterns together, where we were actually drawing it by hand before that. And then it allowed us to get better utilization of our fabric. So therefore, we were throwing less in the bundle when we were cutting it. So the first computer we had was 512 kilobits of RAM and 40 megabyte hard disk. And that was big, at the time. And we actually used that computer as well to do our payroll and stuff. And I used to take the computer home, and my twin brother, he was a computer programmer. He he worked on Herdmans, and he was doing all the preventive maintenance on the computer. And he used to teach me how to do graphs on Lotus 123 and DOS. So, I embraced that innovation very, very early in terms of computerization. And, even at that stage, I'd have been the one in the factory, networking the computers together and putting points in and stuff like that. I did all that myself, until we started to grow more. So, I was always into looking at the best way and find the best solution to do things, what a quicker way of doing things. And that's how my whole innovation journey started. So, we went through a lot of innovation in O'Neill's, even from the manufacturing of jerseys. Like whenever I started, the jerseys were, knit on a knitting machine that would round and round and round and knitted them. It probably took about, 12 hours to knit a set of jerseys. And that's the way they're done. They were all cut by hand. They were all printed by hand. And then the next stage of that innovation process again was going out and seeing a thing called sublimation print, where we could add more features. So we started off, printing onto paper the designs, through digital. That was the first time we ever had the digital part in it. And we printed onto a polyester fabric that would, take the design. And that, we still knit the bodies of the jerseys on the machines, but we sewed in and printed the sleeves, which gave a lot of detail, club crest. And then we moved that on then to, a fully printed jersey. And at that stage, we made the screens were done digitally, but we had to make screens and screen print the paper, and it was like a big Guinness poster, and then you had to print the different colors on. So then, just innovated then back to fully printed jerseys, and that's where we're at the minute. Like it's full digital. It's all the designs are done, and it takes us about 12 minutes to produce a jersey now, where before it was taking, a couple of hours maybe by the time you knit it and cut it and printed it and sewed it. So look, I mean, we have embraced our innovation from the very start, and to me, it was always about growing the culture, in the organization to encourage continuous improvement. How can we do this better, quicker, slicker, faster, cheaper? And I think it's very, very important that you get that culture. Throughout O'Neill's and learning from PV O'Neill himself, he was a great innovator himself, and he had always, his philosophy was always if it moves, print it. You know what I mean? And he was great to see, he was all about, personalizing garments. Yeah. And, it was also about vertical integration, and I think it's a very, very, strong point in terms of, try and do as much yourself as you can. So from the very start, like we were buying in yarn, we were knitting the yarn in the fabric, we were dyeing the fabric, we were cutting the fabric, we were printing the fabric, we were sewing the fabric, and then we were actually retailing the product. So from the very, very start to finish. So I believe that, in any business, you should try and do as much of it yourself, because inevitably, if you're dealing with somebody and you're dependent on somebody, and this pandemic has showed it to everybody, if you're dependent on people, at some stage they're going to let you down. So you should try and take as much responsibility for your own supply chain as you can, and then you'll never be in that circumstances, because you'll always be ahead of the game if you can do it. And not all businesses can do that. I fully understand that, but for me, that was a big trick, to try and do as much as we could ourselves and be less dependent on others.
Yeah, it's great that, I think a lot of people would hear the term innovation and think it means you'll end up getting rid of staff along the way, but you've actually grown the company as 700 staff. And how have you managed to get the whole team behind innovation there at O'Neill's and to get them confident about it?
Well, I suppose in our game it was different. Like in terms of, at one stage we might have had 200 stitchers on the floor sewing, But now all them stitchers are moved on either to our e-com facility where we're selling online and digital and, you know, working in art rooms or whatever. So it's just a matter of making sure that you have provision on there. First of all, you've got to bring them with you and say, look, here, do you want to do something on a sewing machine all days of your life, or do you want to move ahead and work in, you know, the warehouse, or work in, you know, the online department, or work in graphics or whatever? And most people would jump at that opportunity. So, you know, if people, you know, if you can build that culture of improvement and you can bring people along with you and say, look, we're going to make your life better. We're going to give you a better job. We're, you know, you probably ability to earn more money or whatever. You know, that's most important. You know, and that's about getting them to trust you and what you're trying to do. That you're not trying to shaft anybody. You're trying to grow it. So, you know, ever since we did that, you know, we decreased the number of stitchers we had, but we were able to become more efficient, you know, by automation. But I think that, you know, digital solutions and, you know, mechanical solutions and robot, you know, is brilliant, because if you look at our labor situation at the minute, you know, we nearly have full employment. And how are we going to get the people to grow the economy? The only way we can do that is becoming more, you know, mechanized and digitalized, and releasing good people to do the more important things in terms of whether it be marketing, or whether it be, you know, planning, or whether it be managing, or whatever. So you want to try and get the good people and get them moved on up the chain, and getting, you know, the tasks that, you know, are maybe more menial or whatever, automated. And that's kind of the philosophy that, you know, I would have followed throughout my career.
And Kieran, the study deal is, of course, a huge opportunity for innovation in Strabane and Derry in the Northwest. What do you think it will mean for the region?
Well, you know, first of all, you know, there's going to be £250 million at least going into the local economy. You know, from a Strabane perspective, there's a whole new regeneration, and I have to put my hat off to everyone that's involved in that, and to Leo Murphy and Northwest College, who are going to relocate there as well. A new leisure facility, a new health facility. You know, so from my perspective in Strabane, obviously a lot going on in Derry, but I think the most important thing, you know, is the investment. You know, 250 million investment, and obviously there will be match funding, maybe more going into that. But if you look at the vision of the study deal, you know, and it's to deliver the vision, you know, to provide a thriving, prosperous, and sustainable city and district with equality of opportunity for all. I think, you know, that's what it does, and that's what it will do, and that's, you know, it does what it says in the tin. So for me, that's the most important thing. It embraces everybody, not just business, but, you know, opportunity for all as well is very, very important. And I think it's a very, very exciting project for both Strabane and Derry going forward. And I look forward to, you know, playing my part and helping to bring that about.
Absolutely. I can see some comments and questions coming in here on the chat box, and we're going to head to those in a minute. But I wondered, Kieran, before we do that, if you could tell us about measuring the success of innovation. How do you measure success, or how have you measured success at O'Neill's?
Well, I was always a great believer in what gets measured gets done, you know. So whether it be productivity, or whether it be cost savings, or whether it be whatever, you know, you have to, whenever we were, you know, so say I was buying a machine that was going to increase our productivity by 20% or whatever, we would always done a cost benefit analysis. You know, when we would look at, here's the cost of the machine, here's, you know, the payback or whatever. So we could turn around and say, well, that'll be paid, well, for within 3 years, we'll pay that. And then any benefit we get from that's free. But it's amazing if you sit down and do that, you know, and look at it, and look at what you're spending, and look at what you're saving, and look at what you can do, and look at what labor you can, you know, release or whatever. You know, some of the paybacks could be within 8 months. Do you know what I mean? Or whatever, you know, that's so for me, it was always about, you know, you had to convince the board and shareholders that, you know, this expense was, you know, going to be worthwhile. So we would have had a template of how we had done like a, you know, a payback, and we, you know, and it could be anything from whether if we were buying more sock machines, which would increase our productivity for the same labor cost, the same overhead cost, or whatever. Here's what, you know, and we sold the socks of that production. No, here's what the payback would be in the machine. So in 99% of the times, it was just a no-brainer when we presented the business case, and, you know, the shareholders and the rest of the board looked at it, you know, go ahead, you know, as long as it was showing the payback. So I think it's very important, but, you know, it's not only just to consider the payback in terms of, you know, the productivity, or profitability, but it's the release of people as well. You don't need to, you can move people on to do better things. And I think the skills is a big part of it as well. And promoting skills and training, we would always have, training programs within O'Neill's to upskill and reskill people, for different jobs. So, people need to understand that the skills is a very big part of growing the economy as well. And obviously, with my involvement in 21 training here in Strabane as well, that's what we are pushing to the forefront, trying to skill people up for the jobs that are needed. There's no point in training people for jobs that's not there.
Yeah, absolutely. I know it's fantastic what you've done in your career, Kieran, and something tells me your retirement isn't going to be kind of feet up, slippers on either, is it?
No, definitely not. As the man says, I think I was too busy to work.
We've got some comments coming in here, wishing you the very best for a happy and healthy retirement, and congratulations on a hugely successful career. Kieran, we have about 10 minutes now for questions from the audience. So as I said, there's some good ones coming in already, and please feel free to our audience to type them into the chat box, and we'll try and get through as many as we can. We have a question here about failure, which is an interesting one. Innovation has a level of failure associated with it. How did the company handle this concept?
Well, it's like anything, everything has risk associated with it. But I think when we talk about risk, it's about minimizing risk as much as you can. And if you do your homework, like I say, and do paybacks and, do the right model, you minimize that risk of failure. Like, I'm not saying that everything we did was, 100% and worked out right, but you've got to take, the rough with the smooth. But if you do the right preparation and you do the right investigations and you do the, prepare the right business case, and you're happy with your figures, and you're not, you're dealing with facts. And when you deal with the facts, you'll probably find that in most cases that you won't fail. But it's about minimizing that risk of fail by doing the right. And if you talk to any of the staff, they're fed up hearing me saying failure to prepare for failure. So do the preparation, do the homework. It's worth it in the long run. And then if you can get that right, you're convinced, and then you minimize the risk of fail.
Yeah, absolutely. And what do you have anything you might not want to tell us what the biggest failure was, or have you got any examples of failures that you learned from?
I'll be honest, I don't really think, I can't really think of any, things that we did that didn't work out. No, hand on heart, I don't know any, to be quite honest. Maybe some, products that we produced didn't go that well, or some of them maybe took a lot longer to get off the ground, but no, in most cases, we got there in the end.
That's an incredible achievement. And we have a question here. Did Kieran have a mentor at the start when he took over?
Yeah, well, actually, I had a couple of mentors throughout my career. There was a guy from Shirt Factory in Derry, and he helped me immensely with understanding the whole things about time and study and whatever. And he used to come once a week. But in later years then, I did a thing with InvestNI. It was like a business health check. And there was a guy called Tony Lake. And Tony was delivering it on behalf of InvestNI. He was outside. And I just kept in touch with him all the time. And he did a lot of our training plans and all that kind of stuff. And he was a real good mentor to me. He was very level-headed and stuff. But look, I did other things as well. I completed a Leadership for Growth program at Queen's, which, helped me. And, you learn a lot of things, that you don't realize before. And I used to think that everybody should be like me, that everybody should be in early in the morning and stay late at night and, do this and do that. But whenever I went on these courses and we looked at, different people and, the different colors of people and their different traits or whatever, like personality profiles, I realized that if everybody was like me, it would be a disaster. Do you know what I mean? But you know what I mean? So you need different people of different, you need the flirty one, you need the huggy one, you need the regimented one, you need somebody who's going to dot T's and, dot I's and cross T's. So that's the kind of way I built up my management team. We had kind of one of each on our management team. And I think that works out very well. You can't have everybody doing the same thing, but training was brilliant. I did a Leadership for Growth program with InvestNI and IDA, where our Enterprise Ireland, sorry, well, there was 40 CEOs from throughout Ireland, did a program in IESE in Barcelona, a week in Barcelona, a week in New York, and a week in Barcelona, and that was absolutely brilliant. We covered everything in terms of, we went out to the innovation, we had out different companies, we did negotiation, we did setting up boards, we did everything. So I think it's good to go out and widen your horizon, where, previously I'd have been saying, I can't leave the factory, and I knew I couldn't leave the factory because they wouldn't do nothing, and that's the way it was whenever I was it. So, no, I in the last 20 years, I took a step back and went and, did these programs and learned how other people were doing it as well, and I think that's most important.
We have a question about the pending delivery of both City Deal and Inclusive Future Fund. How do we exploit this sort of general confidence and momentum to scale up beyond 2030 and put the city and Strabane back on the map as an economic, innovative, responsible and sustainable powerhouse?
Well, I think it's very, very important, that everybody works together for the one aims and objectives. There's a lot of work going on the City Deals, and there are a lot of different partners that are all there for the, the one goal. I know that, the Northwest, are behind when it comes to foreign direct investment from InvestNI, but believe me, I am working, and, my main focus as a board member of InvestNI is to try and make sure that our local area is looked after. And, we're making some strides, not a lot yet, but look, it's taken time. We've only been on the board a year. Obviously, COVID has been in the middle of it as well, but we are making some strides. And I would just encourage everybody to work together for the same goals and objective. There's some great people working on that City Deal. And if we can all work together for the same objectives and, keep lobbying and put the Northwest in the forefront, I do believe firmly that we will succeed in the objectives to, have a thriving, prosperous, sustainable city district with equality of opportunity for all. So, that's the way we're going to do it, by working together, I think, and forget about any of the politics or party political stuff.
You've always been a huge champion of Strabane, Kieran, and I just wondered, did you ever consider leaving? Were you ever offered anything elsewhere that you thought of taking up? I know you mentioned Australia earlier in the career, but as you got up to that high level, did you ever think about leaving and moving to somewhere else?
I would never ever have thought of moving anywhere else. I would, if I was offered a job anywhere, I wouldn't move. I mean, I'm, born and bred in Sion Mills, and I have been there all my life. I live about a mile from my home place. My brothers and sisters live within a mile of me. I would never ever consider moving anywhere else. Never. It's just, that's just the way I am, and I'm passionate about Strabane. I'm passionate about the Northwest. I'm passionate about trying to, grow. That's why I joined the board of InvestNI, to try and make a difference. It's slow, and I'll tell you it's slow, because it's not like working in, private sector where, you make a decision and it happens. When you're working with the public sector, there's a lot of corporate governance and stuff associated with any decisions. It is slow. It is frustrating at times, but, you got to just keep chipping and chipping and chipping away. And, I think we will see some success. The main thing is that, we don't get lost in foreign direct investment and bringing companies into dairy that, we're displacing jobs that are already in dairy and, pushing up wages or whatever. It's about looking at, jobs that will get people, especially, the people who are, inactive or whatever, and getting them into jobs, whether it be manufacturing or whatever, and to try and grow the region. And if we can do that, and we can get more jobs into dairy, dairy will definitely be the place where everybody else will want to go, believe me.
Brilliant. A question from Orla: was O'Neill's able to leverage innovation or other grants along the way to help innovation?
Look, I mean, again, because of process, sometimes, when you look at innovation, whatever, look, we created a new hurling helmet, and we were helped with R&D from InvestNI. We created a new hurling ball core, and we got help from InvestNI. But, we were just innovating nearly on a daily basis, looking at different ways and whatever. And we just didn't have the time to sit down and look at, doing a grant application. It wasn't just worth it for us, because, we'd have been meeting and coming home if we had did that. It was just too slow. So, like, that's some of the things that we need to look at. But can I just say something here now? There's a new program coming out now from ERAP, where I think they'll be investing about £5.5 million to support recovery and the rebuilding of the economy in Northern Ireland. And, you know, the way to get onto that scheme, there's about, you know, £5,000 of it, like a voucher or whatever, or, you know, or a payment, let's say. But to get on that scheme, you have to complete a self-assessment on Innovate INI to show that you're innovating. So I would encourage all the members and everyone here present to get onto the Innovate INI website and do the self-assessment. It's very, very straightforward, but at least it gets you in the mix that whenever this scheme comes to fruition, that you're ready to apply. And, you know, they'll not be, you know, it'll just be to help the companies, but that will probably be part of the criteria that you have to have the self-assessment completed. So I always say, you know, first up, best dressed, get in there, get on the Innovate INI website, complete your assessment, and you'll be ready to go once the scheme is launched.
Yeah, that's a great practical tip, Kieran. Thank you. I think we've time for one more question. This is from Kyle. Have you encountered any limiting factors during the innovation process? Is there anything that could have made innovation easier at O'Neill's?
Look, I mean, innovation, and, you know, as I say, you know, finding solution to problems, you know, most of the thing is always about, you know, cash. You know what I mean? Do we have the money to do that? You know, is that our priority at the minute or whatever? So again, you know, like there's things I suppose I would have loved to have done and, you know, made things better, but I just knew that, you know, the cash wasn't there maybe to do it. But, you know, in fairness, if we did the research and did the plan, and no matter how big it was, like for us to introduce the digital thing at the start, like it was like we planned 10 machines or something at a cost of about 30 grand each. You know, it was a big spend at the time. And I did the research and did the presentation, and, you know, people said to me, "Keen, you're mad. The shareholders would never go for that." Like, so, you know, once I seen it, I could prove that it was be done. And not so long after, we bought another 10. So, you know, the limiting factor is always cash, and it's always, you know, you know, whether the shareholders want to, you know, spend that or take that investment. And, you know, if you have the cash and you can do the prove what you're going to do, even if you have to borrow the money, I think, you know, you'll always get success. But for me, sometimes it would be cash flow. Yeah.
Yeah, hopefully George has just added a question which we might be able to answer in a nutshell. It kind of follows on from that. Did you have any issues convincing the board to go with the investments that you've proposed? I think you've kind of touched on that.
I never ever. They were always very, very supportive once we had the you know, the data in place, and that would have been from, you know, when I moved in there, our first extension. You know, I moved into 16,000 square foot in 1990 from, you know, when I took over in '88 as managing director, and then within a year we doubled the size of it to 16,000, and then within 3 years we put on another 55,000. So they knew that, you know, we could get the orders and we could sustain the business and grow the business. There was absolutely no problem. You know, we ended up with 250,000 square foot from 7,000, and from 30 people to 750, and that was all done by, you know, ensuring that we could do the right presentation to the board and to the shareholders that, look, this is what we need to do to grow the business. And if we grow the business, this is what the return will be.
Brilliant. Kieran, thank you so much for sharing your innovation insights with us, and thanks to everybody for, you know, those questions. And we've had a few comments coming in. Dawn has said, "Thanks, Kieran, amazing and inspirational as always," and I think that kind of sums it up. Before we finish, we would like to invite some of our City Deal partners to share their reflections on why innovation is so important here in the Northwest. Rosalind Young is the investment manager at Derry City and Strabane District Council and works daily with local companies to attract inward investment and cultivate a thriving business environment. We'll also be hearing from Peter Devine, Head of Strategic Partnerships at Ulster University. So we'll start with Ros. Ros, you're very welcome.
Hi, morning, Jeananne. Thank you. And thank you, Kieran, for sharing your story. You've taken O'Neill's on an incredible journey and achieved so much success in your time at the helm. I think what's clear is that you embraced kind of innovation throughout that journey in every process and every challenge. And I think that can be applied to every industry and every sector, anybody on the webinar this morning. I think as well, it's clear that the company's innovation strategy started at the CEO level, and you've kind of built that culture of innovation.
Sorry to interrupt you there, Ros. I think your camera might be off.
Oh, sorry, apologies.
There we go.
Oh.
There we go. Yep.
Is that okay?
Oh, we had you for a second.
Apologies. Oh, it all been going so well this morning too.
Shall we? We could have a chat with Peter first, Ros. Oh, there you are. Ros is back.
Apologies.
You're fine.
Yeah, I was just kind of just to say that obviously the O'Neill's kind of company innovation strategy really started with yourself, Kieran, and you kind of built that culture of innovation within the company. And then I suppose then that the kind of technology and how to deliver that transformation kind of flows from that. And I suppose at the heart of the City Deal it's around that kind of next generation technologies and the digital connectivity, and those are the key drivers for economic productivity and innovation. I suppose that's why there's £11 million has been set aside in the City Deal, and that's going to deliver on the smart cities and that digital infrastructure. And I suppose where we're at with that now is that we've the outline business case, and we're establishing a project board now who's going to oversee the delivery of the innovation, digital and health pillar. And I think a key part of the O'Neill's success story has been Strabane, and you'd mentioned that. So the single biggest allocation in the City Deal is that regeneration of Strabane Town Centre. So that's 50 million. So we have a recruitment drive on at the minute who's going to put the multidisciplinary team in place to bring forward that project. And what we'll see then is a mixed use of activities. You mentioned the Northwest Regional College. So we'll see the campus relocated into the heart of the town, business incubation, leisure, primary health hub, all into the heart of the town, revitalising the town centre and developing the public realm, and then bringing footfall into the heart of the town. So thank you very much, Kieran, and enjoy to hear where you go next on your journey as well.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Ros, Peter, we'll head over to you now.
Thank you very much, Jeananne, and thanks, Kieran. I just really enjoyed listening to you there, Kieran. It's just such a brilliant example of innovation. And just to pick up on Ros's theme, I think hearing how you sort of embedded a culture of innovation in the company, and somebody asked about failure, I think that was a really good question, because I get the impression that in your company, people aren't afraid to bring forward ideas and dare to do something new. And that idea of being willing to do something and try it, even if it might fail, as long as you fail fast and learn from it and go on, I think that is at the heart of innovation. And the other theme I picked up from you was exposing people to different ideas and different things is really important. Like you talking about going and seeing your brother who had a computing background and picking that up and then adopting the computer aided design in your thing and learning that from other people. And for me, what we've been doing that in that my life's work, I work in industry and then in academia, is bringing academia and industry together and trying to find ways to take the fantastic research that we are doing and converting that into economic opportunities for companies to engage with us. And that's exactly the type of thing that I would see that like when you went and you saw that computer aided design and saw how that could help, and you said, right, I can embed that in my company. What we want to do is get companies seeing the research that we do in the university and finding ways to turn that into economic impact for them. And we do that all the time already. We do it through KTP, knowledge transfer programs, through the Fusion program on a cross-border basis. We're right beside Donegal. We do lots of work there. The innovation vouchers program where companies can do that. So we're already doing it, and we're doing it well. And there's loads of examples of that. So like, we do research on really future-looking, smart robots that can do fantastic things. But somebody might come in and say, well, do you see that grasping tool that you use for that hand? Could we use that in our product? Or the way that robot sees and understand what it's doing, could we convert that into a vision system for looking at our packaging or our packing? Or there's a very interesting one where there's a company looking at tumors, so cancerous tumors, and currently they measure those by hand, and it's a bit inaccurate. So could we do that using cameras and vision processing that we learn from robotics? So that whole innovation space, where people from different backgrounds come together and do really exciting things, I think that's really what we can do in the City Deal. And we're doing it in the areas where we are strongest. We have the most fantastic AI, artificial intelligence and computing in our engineering. We have personalized medicine over at CTRIC, led by Tony Bjorson. We've got the robotics and automation and engineering with Justin Quinn and Professor Martin McKennedy. These are 3 really world-class pieces of research. But what City Deal will enable us to do is accelerate the conversion of that into economic opportunities for companies, and have a place where what Kieran sort of facilitated in his company to happen, people come together and think, creating a place where we can do that at scale and scale it up. And I would touch on another thing that you mentioned, Kieran. I just agree with you so much. FDI has its place. Attracting companies to come here and absolutely has its place. But we also need to promote scale up of existing companies, so getting small companies bigger, and also new startups. And I think that's where innovation can really, really play its part, and where the university can play its part in helping that to happen here. And the final thing I would say is the other side of that coin is I left here in the early 90s. I wasn't like you, Kieran. I didn't have the I was going to say B, but I'll say the guts to go for it, and do it here. I left. But I come back and I've seen this place transform, and I think City Deal is going to just accelerate that. So creating economic opportunity, these FDIs and startups and spin-outs and scaling up companies is great, but that has to be fueled by the people. And we have one of the best education systems. I've been around the world. We have a young population, so we have the ingredients, but we have to match that economic growth with the skills as well. And you mentioned Leo Murphy and the great stuff they're doing and the expansion they're doing in Japan. We work with the Letterkenny Institute as well. I consider this cross-border area to be one economic area. And then ourselves, obviously, in Ulster University, taking these young people and creating the opportunities is one part, but you have to have the people ready to take advantage of those opportunities and do what I wasn't able to do, which is stay here and build a, I had to go and come back. But the opportunities are here now, and that's what drives me, is trying to create these opportunities so that young people can build their careers and build their lives here for the betterment of everybody. So just cheers to you, Kieran, inspirational story. Really, really enjoyed listening to it. Thank you. And best of luck in your retirement.
Thank you, Peter. And just on that note, you mentioned there about skills and retaining our talent. We've a few messages here in the chat about the MEGA scheme, which is a fantastic scheme, manufacturing engineering degree apprenticeship that started at Magee. Just a message from Maria Curran to encourage more companies around Derry and Strabane to consider taking on one of these very talented young people next year. It's a really exciting program, and we have some links there as well from Myra on how to find out more about that degree apprenticeship program, and indeed about the City Deal, which is at derrycitydeal.com. So thank you so much to Kieran, to Roz and Peter and Dawn, and all our audience for taking part. Thanks to the team, Dawn, as I've mentioned, and Anna and the team at Londonderry Chamber. And thank you to you at home for your participation today. I hope you've enjoyed it as much as we have, hearing Kieran's really useful insights, and we wish you and your businesses all the very best in your innovation journey. So thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Thanks, Kieran. Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.